Hi there, I'm Kevin Jones. I'm the Executive Director of SAHIA and our Event Safety Council, and I thought to share some insights into our recent activities. One of the highlights over the last 5 years has been to develop and award professional designations that are registered with SAQA. But during the COVID pandemic and the state of national disaster, we've been involved in several other activities that support our mission to embed a safety-first philosophy in the events industry. Obviously, we continued our work on the development of the SANS 10366 standard, but we also worked actively with government and other industry bodies to publish reopening guidelines for business and sporting events. The business guidelines were published in partnership with various associations active in the business sector, particularly associations active within the South African Events Council. The sporting guidelines were developed with input from SASCOC and were adopted by the DSAC Return to Play Ministerial Advisory Committee, so DSAC, the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture. Both guides were widely referenced in government and discussed actively within both NEDLAC, the National Economic Development and Labour Council, and NatJoints, the National Joint Operational and Intelligence Structure responsible for safety and security at all major sporting, cultural and recreational events. I'd like to talk about the new professional designations for event safety officers. There are 2 levels of designation, starting with the Certified Event Safety Practitioner designation. At this level, candidates are required to hold an NQF Level 4 qualification, and they're required to demonstrate at least 2 years of work experience in event safety. They're required to sign a Code of Professional Conduct and write an online multiple choice exam that can be accessed through the SAHIA website. The exam covers many issues around event safety, with a particular focus on the South African Sports and Recreational Events Act, or SASRIA, and SANS 10366, the national standard for safety in the events industry. Once they've passed the exam, candidates for the designation will need to provide some basic paperwork, such as a certified copy of their ID, certified copy of their highest academic qualification, a copy of their CV, and at least 2 testimonial letters from colleagues in the events industry supporting their claim of competence and ethical business practice. Individuals also need to provide a comprehensive portfolio of evidence demonstrating that they know how to assess risks and prepare an event safety plan as described in Chapter 2 of the SASRIA Act. As is the case with all professional designations, it needs to be maintained. All designated persons are required to maintain their membership of SAHIA, abide by a Code of Professional Conduct, and participate in a program of continuing professional development that keeps them up to date on the trends and technologies shaping the future of the events industry. Without going into too much detail, the professional level requires greater knowledge and greater work experience and a more comprehensive assessment of an individual's knowledge and experience than does the practitioner level designation. So we've spoken about both the SASRIA Act and SANS 10366, and one thing they have in common is the requirement for an event organizer to appoint a competent person to act as an event safety officer. Fortunately, the Department of Employment and Labour has published a document that describes how, for a person to be deemed competent in the health and safety aspects of their work, they should be qualified through knowledge, training, and experience, and where applicable, they should hold a formal qualification to do the assigned work. They place particular emphasis on identifying workplace hazards, and they stress that the person should have knowledge of the laws and regulations that apply to their work. SACWA have a similar set of criteria for an individual to be deemed competent. Individuals applying for a professional designation are assessed on what they call the 4 E's of excellence. So when we conduct our assessment for an individual applying for recognition as an event safety practitioner, we look at their education, their work experience, their work ethic, and we require candidates to sit for an examination and provide us with a portfolio of evidence. The topics covered in the exam are all described in detail on the SACIA website, but in simple terms, we use an event safety competency matrix that has been developed with input from colleagues from around the world. We are an affiliate partner of both the Event Safety Alliance in the USA and the Global Crowd Management Alliance in the UK. What we're doing is looking at the global principles of event safety within a framework defined by South African legislation, standards, and bylaws. We think we're making good progress in promoting a safety-first philosophy in the events industry, but we have to ask what happens when we take our eye off the safety-first ball. And here are just a few examples of what goes wrong, what can go wrong. Some of them are recent, some of them a little bit older. So let's start in 1989 when Gaynor Young fell down a stage shaft at the State Theatre during a performance of Camelot. She was the understudy for the female role of Guinevere, and when Kate Normington, the lead actress, fell ill, Gaynor took over. She went on stage that afternoon, never having participated in a dress rehearsal or a technical rehearsal, and in the scene just before interval, disaster struck. She missed her footing and she fell 18 meters down an unguarded lift shaft. She spent 4 weeks in a coma and suffered multiple fractures and extensive brain damage. She lost her hearing and much of her eyesight. Today, she is recovered, much recovered. She's a sought-after motivational speaker, but she still experiences pain and trauma from the injuries that she suffered. You'd have thought that the State Theatre would learn from this experience, but 30 years later, in 2020, an almost identical accident occurred when Raymond Green, a guitarist with the house band rehearsing for an episode of Mzansi Idols, also fell down an unguarded lift shaft at the same venue. Like Gaynor, he suffered severe injury, and whilst he appears to have made a full recovery, it's worth noting that the events environment is such that people are often unfamiliar with the hazards right in front of them. Sports fans in South Africa are known for being passionate, and football fans are notorious for poor behaviour. In 2001, that passion led to the Ellis Park Stadium disaster, where 43 spectators were killed in a stampede at a football match between Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates. Political rallies are also scenes for potential disaster, not least because event organisers are often selected based on their political alignment rather than their technical or operational competence. In 2003, a tent collapsed during a speech by Thabo Mbeki at the National Women's Day celebrations at the Union Buildings. The president escaped injury, but 89 people were admitted to hospital, and Soraya Scott suffered an injury to her spinal cord that left her permanently paralyzed from the waist down. In 2016, so that's 13 years later, a similar incident was faced by President Jacob Zuma. He was forced to run for cover when the tent in which he was delivering a Day of Reconciliation speech in Northwest Province collapsed during a storm. 13 people were injured, with 4 people admitted to hospital. The entertainment industry is also under the spotlight. In 2012, Florentina Popa died from injuries caused when a scaffolding tower fell on her before a Linkin Park concert in Cape Town. What makes this even more traumatic is that the tower had been erected in the car park outside the stadium. She was killed before she even arrived at the concert venue. In 2014, Afrikaans singer Jack Parow was electrocuted on stage during a concert at the Castle of Good Hope, and according to local or social media reports, the singer was thrown to the floor and knocked out. So accidents happen in entertainment, in sports, in politics. And whilst all of these incidents are tragic, it's worth noting that people don't need to die or to be injured in order for there to be failure of safety protocols. My last example is a stage erected at OR Tambo International Airport on the 26th of July 2022 to welcome Banyana Banyana home after their victory in the Africa Cup of Nations football tournament. The structure was patently unsafe, cobbled together with trussing from different manufacturers. Cable ties were used to bind elements of the structure together, and almost every safety protocol detailed in Chapter 14 of the SANS 10366 safety standard were ignored. Fortunately, nobody was hurt, but that's only good fortune that prevented an accident on a day that will be remembered as a celebration of the Banyana Banyana victory. Of course, safety mishaps aren't unique to South Africa, and so we work closely with our colleagues from around the world. We're an affiliate of the Event Safety Alliance and an affiliate of the Global Crowd Management Alliance. By working together, industry bodies from around the world are looking to create a global commitment to safety in the events industry. Raising an awareness of the importance of event safety is important, but awareness alone isn't enough. If you are an event safety officer, I want to encourage you to join SACIA and get involved in our Event Safety Council. Write the examinations and apply for a professional designation that recognizes your skill and your competence. Hold event organizers and city authorities accountable for their actions, and work to embed a safety-first philosophy into everything that you do. If you're an event organizer, make an effort to know the legislation that impacts on your business and ensure you have an in-depth understanding of your responsibilities. At the end of the day, you're the person responsible for appointing a competent person to act as an event safety officer at your event. And if you fail to check their claim of competence, it's your head on the block. The penalty for failure is described in Chapter 4 of the SASRIA Act, and individuals convicted of an offence are subject to a fine and or a period of imprisonment not exceeding 20 years. It's simply not worth the risk. So employ a designated event safety officer, and know that if you're ever challenged in court, you can assert that you fulfilled your obligations by appointing a competent person to manage safety at your event. If you're a city council or a city official, enforce the relevant laws and city bylaws that apply. These exist to protect the public, event companies, technical crew, and performers. The lives of these people are in your hands, and if you fail to enforce compliance, accidents will happen and people will get hurt. If you're a structural engineer checking a temporary structure for compliance, make sure you check it against the approved construction plans, whether it's a tent, a marquee, a stage, or a camera platform. If it isn't assembled in terms of the manufacturer's structural plan, you have no way of knowing on site whether it is structurally stable or not. And finally, if you're a performer at a music event or a speaker at a business conference, read your audience and be aware of crowd surge. Event patrons die when the movement of people isn't properly managed, and if it means you have to stop your show in order to keep people safe, then stop the show. In closing this video, I want to recognize Siyabonga Ngodze, a young rigger who died when he fell from the FMB stadium roof on the 1st of December 2018. He was working on the Global Citizen concert when he fell. It's been asked several times, does somebody need to die before we take action, before we take event safety seriously? In this instance, somebody has died. We need to take event safety seriously, and we need to hold people accountable for their failures. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give me a call. I look forward to working with everybody in our commitment to drive certification in our sector, rebuilding our industry after the devastation of the COVID pandemic, rebuilding based on a shared commitment to standards, training, and industry certification. Thank you.